Hello and welcome back to the penultimate Reddit League show of the regular season for season 6 in the UAE. And today I'm joined by Nakiro. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Doing good as well. Nice to have you back. And yeah, let's start off this week, as always, by looking at the results for Reddit League next. And yeah, G Papa not playing means that Secateur pretty much has his first place secured. It would require him to pick up, I think, less than 3,000 points or around there in the last map to lose that spot. So probably not going to happen. And yeah, behind that, still pretty close from third to sixth.
Yeah, indeed. What a shame that G Papa didn't play, but I would say it doesn't mean I hope for him it doesn't have a lot of consequences. Good score for Clemens here, and yes, things are still quite open for third place. And since we are playing remote world, anything can happen. So 4,000 point advance is not that much, I would say. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see. For this last week how things will turn out.
Yeah, definitely. Like 4,000 points on a remote world is, as you said, nothing. And you said G Papa's miss this week is without consequences, which is true. But if he misses another week, then suddenly there might be some consequences. I mean, there definitely are some consequences because I think I've mentioned this before, but it might have been a while ago, so better to mention it again. If you do miss 2 weeks in Reddit League next, you're not disqualified or anything, but you lose your right to be promoted to Division 5. Um, and
Right.
so even if he would manage to stay in third place, which may be possible, he's got 19k to Steiner. Even if he would manage that without playing the last leg, he'd be automatically, not able to go up to Division 5 next season. So we'll see. But it certainly, would open up another promotion spot potentially for one of the other four down there. So very exciting last game week for sure as we move over to Division 5B and their results. And yeah, some pretty good scores overall. Pretty much most of them, well, all of them over 20k. But generally, the UAE seeds were all fairly easy. There were maybe like one or two rounds that weren't straightforward in there. But yeah, Lajej, perfect score. I think the first for him in his Reddit League career in his first season, and a pretty important one, I'd say as well. Maybe not for the table, but against a red card, there's nothing nothing more that you can gain from that other than getting a perfect score and getting nice 4 points.
Yes, indeed, a very good score from Lajes. Yeah, I hope he will be happy to well, not really finish this season with that, but since there's still 1 week left, but that seems nice to have. Yeah, and the seed was fairly easy, I guess, but I think out of the all the seed that was probably for me at least the most difficult. So there was some
Mm.
location that were quite difficult to get out of. So yeah, I think that's very nice of him. And for Cookers, unfortunately, with his loss against Soundsbine, I think that things are definitely over for him, and he will be relegated next season.
Yeah. Do you
Unfortunately.
do you remember? I remember one of the seeds had a round in Kalba, I think, on the east coast, which I think was the most difficult out of the rounds. I don't remember if it was this seed or one of the others.
No, I don't think so. That was this year.
Okay, okay. But yeah, as you said, Kukus, unfortunately, with another loss here, Soundbite will take his win, and Mr. Snow as well with his win, as well as Danny Blondes going towards promotion as we'll look over at the table. And yeah, with Palena's loss as well against Penguin, I forgot to mention that. Penguin overtakes Palena in the table and goes into third, so in prime position now to maybe go into that promotion playoff on the in the last game.
Yes, indeed, but things are clearly not over. There's still a lot. It's a very stacked, and even until second place. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, for Berlin, yeah, with this loss again, Penguin, it's still, things can still be, anything can happen next week, so we'll see, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, as we mentioned before, Kuka's unfortunately on 6 points. Technically, with a perfect score in a remote world, maybe, but probably not. So will unfortunately get relegated. And Corgi against Zephlin will be deciding that relegation playoff spot and who will get to just stay in the division. And I think for everyone like Tribliha, Lagege, I think are just gonna stay sort of mid-table. There's not much to play for. Again, Leger similar situation to Kuka's, maybe with a perfect score, but even then, there's so many people between him and that promotion spot that would all have to get like 0 or 1 point. That it seems unlikely. And above them, from third to sixth, technically, all people still fighting for that promotion playoff spot. And the reason why I'm excluding Danny Blonde in that second automatic playoff spot, automatic promotion spot, sorry, is because of this as we look at the matches for next week, because he's playing against a red carded player. So he's got his automatic promotion spot in the bag as well.
Yes, indeed. I completely forgot about that, but yeah, since he's guaranteed to get promoted, so congrats to him, I guess. But there's still something interesting with those fixtures, since there's, for instance, Anono against Soundbite. In case of Palinha and Penguin, if they lose their matches, one of them could be promoted. And against a very interesting match, Palinha versus Lagage. Palinha has to win if he wants to get that promotion spot back.
Yeah, definitely. Difficult matchup as well against Lajej, who just coming off of that perfect score in the UAE might be motivated to, just get another win in there at the end of the season. And you mentioned the promotion fight Penguin Palena. Penguin definitely with the easier, in quotation marks, matchup against Corgi, who on the other end also needs a win, as Cephalin, who is his opponent for that relegation playoff fight, is going to be up against Cookers. So definitely the favor there on Cephalin's side. Zotomo making a slight mistake there with Triblia's flag, as we'll ignore that. But yeah, the other games, Triblia against Mr. Swiss Snow, relatively inconsequential. I mean, Mr. Swiss Snow could finish the season in first if he wins that. If he doesn't, he'll finish in second. No real consequences, but I'm sure knowing him, he would definitely want that first place. And Treblinka will likely finish in, I think it's 8th place anyway, no matter what happens in this game. And yeah, but as we said, so still some interesting games there for promotion and relegation fights, even if it may not be for the direct ones. Moving on to Division 5A and their results. And this one seemed to have a few lower scores. There's Rossel, Keith, Upfloxeed all scoring below 20k, but still some pretty good results as well. Biquet, the other Frenchman here in Division 5, scoring perfect as well. And some close calls there as well. Jack just dropping 4 points, Damir just 47. Close to perfect scores as well.
Yeah, again, Frenchman, 25k LEC, so congratulations to Biquet, and then we'll see later that this is actually much more important than Lagege in a 5B. Yeah, other than that, yeah, unfortunately for Jake missing out on the 25k, which must be a bit hard, but we'll see that he doesn't really need it anyway. So fortunately for him, it doesn't have any consequences.
Yeah. And the Spanish derby will be taken by Piquetost, 24k to 22k over Hordy. And yeah, Clemu beating Paranoid there as well, as we look at the table. And yeah, as you said, Biquet, really important perfect score there with that extra bonus point. Sneaking into second place. Obviously, Jack now officially nothing can go wrong. He's guaranteed to be promoted in his first place, 7 points ahead of Biquet with just one game to go. But behind that, yeah, I think from Biquet anywhere down to Piquetost, it's still possible for anything to happen, really. Obviously, Piquetost and Mr. Fish with the total score, the tiebreaker, a little bit behind. So if they want to, overtake someone, they're going to have to rely on having more points than them. But yeah, we'll see what the direct matchups are in a second. At the other end, Keith and Strossel pretty much guaranteed to be relegated. Again, perfect scores maybe, but probably not. And it'll be Hordy against Paranoid Android, it seems, to decide that last relegation playoff spot, or the last safety spot.
Yes. Yeah, things are not quite open as it seems, as we will see with the fixture for next week. So I don't expect things to move around a lot for the at least for the promotion spot. And yeah,
As we'll look at that, just keep in mind there we've got Biquet, Clemu, Mr. Fish, and Picatost, who are the fighters for those promotion spots. And as we look at the matchups, they're playing against 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So, in theory, all fairly straightforward matchups, and nothing really should happen. They should all just, casually stroll to a win, and nothing should change in the table. But we're playing on a remote world, so who knows?
yeah, indeed, that's what I was about to say. Since they're playing against very player that they, in theory, should win against, but anything can happen, and it's a map that tends to favor a bit, I would say, no moving player. So I know that Clemu, for instance, is a good no moving player, so he shouldn't have too much things to worry about. So yeah, we will see what happens, and I'm looking forward to any potential upset here, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Then we will skip through Division 4 as they have already finished their regular season, and we'll talk about who they'll be playing against in the playoffs and more in depth on that next week as we'll move over to Division 3 and their results. And yeah, I mean, looking at those results, potentially the easier seed as we've got 3 perfect scores here and a perfect draw. I don't know if that's the first this season, but it doesn't happen all that often between Paulinho and Flipster.
Yeah, very good game from Paulinho and for Fipster too as well, but it's less surprising coming from him, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations, and this doesn't make things easier for me since they're both up in the before me in the table. Yeah, unfortunately for them, Freckle losing against Diesel, he was in a bit of a winning string lately, and he ended up here. He loses here against Diesel, but there's nothing he could really do. Um, yeah, a nice win. I would say I'm quite happy with my win against Still the Sneak, which changed things. We will see in the table with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and yeah, that was indeed not so hard seed, but there was some tricky location. Let's say 1-1 was a bit tricky to pinpoint.
Yeah, the map was it's kind of a weird map, that intersection Geoguessr UAE map. It's very urban, and the only really problematic thing is that some of the very like kind of suburban Dubai areas can be relatively difficult to figure out exactly where you are. And anything else really is not that much of a problem, except for that one round I mentioned in Kalba, where, for example, I saw because for those who know, the subdivisions in the UAE are very weird in that they cover sort of seemingly random spots throughout the country. So Kalba on the east coast is a part of the Sharjah subdivision,
Oh, yeah, right.
which can trick a lot of players if they're not aware of that. Kalba itself, not the smallest of towns, so if you've practiced a bit and you recognize the towns, you should be able to figure it out. But still, I definitely know a couple of people fell for that. All right, then let's look at that table. And yeah, you see there Diesel 4 points ahead of Flipster and Steal This Nick, also with 16k of a score advantage. So I think should also be pretty safe in his promotion spot. And behind that, still very, very close. Obviously, Flipster and Steal This Nick, as I mentioned, but Paulinho as well, close behind, and you as well, still in there in the fight.
Yes, indeed. As I mentioned, yeah, since they got above 25k, it doesn't make things easier for me. But yeah, very interesting last week. That is shaping up here. We will see again, especially considering who they will play against. And behind that, I would say it's a bit difficult. Maybe Close could make a run for the second promotion spot, but seems a bit difficult on a remote road to get 25k. And behind that, unfortunately, for Pastek and another Frenchman, I would say, mostly,
Hmm.
uh, things look a bit won't move that much, and the gap is being unbridgeable at this point.
Yeah, you mentioned closed. I think there's even a chance for him, even without a perfect score. He needs to get about 5,000 points more than Paulinho, and obviously for Paulinho to lose and for you to get at most. No, you can't even get a point. You're like 10,000 points ahead of him in total score, so you need to lose as well, and then he's got a slight chance. Um, but yeah, seems relatively unlikely. And yeah, then mostly in the relegation fight, Hugo unfortunately will be relegated. He'd need a perfect score and he'd need to make up 32,000 points, which is not possible in Geoguessr in one game against Geofogger. So yeah, unfortunately, he will go down to Division 4, and Freckles still with a chance. He's got definitely Geofogger in reach, but also Antoine Pilot, who has the inferior total score, so he could go up to ninth place. Eighth, probably not, with Tante being 14,000 points ahead in total score. But, you know, the relegation playoff spots are definitely realistic as we look at the fixtures for next week. And you kind of hinted at it already. But yeah, Steal This Nick against Flipstar, Paulinho against Diesel. So first against fourth, second against third. And then you potentially with the chance there against Freckles. Although, you know, we all know Freckles is a very good world map player generally. So it's not a match to be underestimated, but it definitely leaves some room open for you to maybe get one of those promotion playoff spots.
Yes, indeed. I'm very excited about this match. I love to play against. I don't remember playing against Freckle in another season, but there's definitely a very interesting player, and on the map I personally like to play. So, and I think him too. So we'll see what who will come on top of on that. And yeah, as you said, yeah, first again for third and Paulinho against Diesel would be Statistic against Flipster. I mean, would be a very interesting match, and makes a bit of hope for me to reach to squeeze in and reach the promotion spot. Yeah, other than that, nothing. Yeah, maybe Antoine Pilot against Close could be a decisive as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think Tante against Pastek also very crucial. I think 13 points is currently ninth place. I don't remember. I think it might be Antoine Pilot. I don't remember 100%. But Pastek is on 14 as far as I remember. Let me actually check.
14.
Yeah, on 14, and Tante is on 13 as well. So they're all very close there. So Tante against Pastek, especially, the winner can just breathe a sigh of relief. They've got nothing to do with relegation, and the loser will have to hope that other results go their way. And yeah, even Geofogger against Hugo has got a chance to make it out of those relegation playoff spots as well. With a win, he could go up to 14, and he's got a pretty decent total score as well. So he'd win a lot of ties in terms of total score. So definitely some interesting matches to be had there. As we'll move over to Division 2. And yeah, here, again, some very high scores there. No one quite getting to the perfect as Stock by 10 points and Guelo missing out by 36. But still some very solid scores throughout.
Yes, indeed, a very good score nonetheless for Stock. He will be happy with his win against Orboca. Unfortunately for Orboca, he lost on two, I would say, difficult rounds, especially the run five wasn't so difficult, but it was completely. He didn't find. I don't remember the town next to Oman, but he didn't find it at all and lost
Mm.
almost 5,000 pounds here. But also he didn't get the a good score on Ras Al Khaimah,
Mhm.
city with a relatively no sign, I would say. So in a lot of players struggle there. So, um, that's a bit of a shame for him. And yeah, Max with not the best score, but still still enough considering he's playing against a red carded player, and I think he's a bit. There's not really any incentive anymore for him to train or to play to give it his best, I guess. So I can understand that.
Yeah, I think, if he was up against someone else in the table, I think he'd still, maybe not practice much, but he'd still play the game seriously. But against a red carded player in the position where he is at, where it's like pretty much irrelevant, we'll see on the table in a second. He's still got like a slight chance, but seems unlikely. Yeah, it's no wonder he's not really giving it his all in that matchup. And yeah, Renata as well, kind of. I feel like I've seen a lot of similar scores from her this season where she's not really, I think, performed at the same level as last season, but kind of gotten a bit lucky in her matchups where all the time, like her opponents also don't really do too great. So she's still winning pretty much all of them. So let's look at that in the table, and we can see there, yeah, she's on 26 points, which means she's pretty much safe in that automatic promotion spot. She does kind of need one more point though if she wants to feel really safe, because as I mentioned, her total score is only the seventh highest actually of the division. It's all very, very close. She's only 9,000 points behind Verdok in with the highest total score. But she does kind of lack those points. So if it does come down to a tiebreaker, she'd probably lose on that. So if Verdok and Stock both win their games, then she could fall down to third place. And yeah, behind that, the total scores, especially from second to fifth, are all pretty much equal, especially going into remote world, just 2,000 points between the four of them. So it could make for some very, very interesting tiebreaker situations at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's a very stack, especially with Otboka losing against Stock, and it makes it very interesting for as as spectators this last week. Not maybe as a player, but that's another. Yeah, you as you say, for Renata, it's still possible to lose his direct promotion spot if, as you say, well, Dog and Stock wins. So yeah, very very interesting. It's a fairly rare the first player has still a chance to lose his direct promotion here. So very interesting.
Mhm.
Either way, I would say good performance for the newcomer on this division, even though it's still not finished. Stock and Samoti, who are very, I hope they would be happy with their respective season so far.
Yeah, definitely some strong performances from the two of them. Another thing I just noticed, I don't know if Sotoma's actually up to date with all of his aces and stuff like that, or if he's just, gotten stuck there eventually when his hardware died and all of that stuff. But if they are true, then those seem like very low numbers. If you consider like 10 weeks, that would be 50 rounds to just have 18 aces as sort of the highest amount of aces from anyone. So I can't imagine they're correct. But I mean, it would also just kind
So,
of be be very typical for this season and its maps that we've had, with pinpoint ability being kind of a non-factor for most of the weeks. But yeah, I don't know if they are correct, so maybe I'll have to check that later. Um, but yeah, let's take a look at those matchups. And fittingly, as we've mentioned a couple of times in the previous weeks, Aston against Armor, the red carded matchup to finish the season. So they won't be interfering with the others.
yeah, it's quite funny to see. Um, and also feel like apart from maybe Cameron against Guavo, all matches here are quite important. So I'm very excited for that final week. For instance, just Weird Dog against VTF, or we see if Weird Dog would be able to go back to D1 again. So
Hmm.
that would be since he's going back and forth with it for a while now. Yeah, Odoka against Samo or Max F against Stock. And Renata against Budbat is not an easy matchup, and if she lose, yeah, and not picking any points, she could totally lose her place or direct promotion spot.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most difficult matchup out of those three. I think Verdok against WTF and Stock against Max are definitely easier than Bubat is as an opponent. I'd say in sort of a random, all odds even, or however you want to call that situation where Max and WTF might still have something to play for, that would maybe be different. But I feel in this situation, yeah, Renata may be there with the most difficult matchup. Obviously, if she just gets a great score and gets a bonus point, that in and of itself would be enough. So it's still all in her hands. But yeah, keep an eye out for that. Definitely still some interesting situations that could happen there. And yeah, Samo against Ordboka is also pretty much deciding whoever goes into the promotion playoff out of the two of them. Technically, I think they both still have like a very slight chance to get into second place in that automatic promotion spot if other results go their way. But yeah, likelihood is high that they'll be just deciding that fourth spot between the two of them. And yeah, that'll do it for the divisions for this week. So we've got one more thing. We can talk about the map that we'll be playing, which is a remote world. I actually don't remember, Nakiro. Were you here in Reddit League in season one?
No, I was here in season 3, so no, I
Ah,
didn't
okay,
play
okay.
Remote World as a competition map.
Yeah, but I'm sure you've played it, out of competitions or in other competitions occasionally, have you?
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah, I know this map. Yeah, so it's quite difficult, but I tend to, as I mentioned earlier, to favor no move players. So it's a bit, it's very interesting to have it as the last week, and I'm I'm betting there will be quite some upset here, depending on the seed, of course. And there's also nothing you can really do to train it. If you don't really play no move or landscape guessing that much, you're gonna have a bit of a rough time, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting map. It's also very hit or miss with its seeds. Like you can create 10 seeds, I think. Like one or two might just not be playable. Like three or four are gonna be pretty cool, fun seeds to play, and three or four are gonna be absolutely awful. But yeah, we'll see what kind of seeds our competitors get. I think the main kind of areas where that no moving prowess that you mentioned really comes into play is stuff like very rural Alaska or stuff like Mongolia, perhaps. Maybe some rural Australia as well. Those kind of areas where you spawn in and you're like, okay, I'm not finding a sign, am I? And most of the times you don't, and then it really does come down to just can you make a better region guess. I think on average that might happen like once a seed at most, maybe once every other seed. So I definitely think there's going to be some seeds where the players don't have to worry about that and don't really need their region guess abilities. But yeah, it definitely can't hurt to have a little bit of that ability. But yeah, so thanks everyone for watching. We've got technically 3 more shows left this season. Next week will be the last of the regular season, and then there'll be a 1 week break for the competitors to practice their playoff games and, get back a little bit of energy. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Hope you enjoyed, and bye.
Bye.